What if the most famous haunted ranch in America has never actually produced a single piece of confirmed evidence, despite millions of dollars, government interest, and 30 years of investigation? For decades, a 500-acre cattle ranch in northeastern Utah has been called the most scientifically studied paranormal hotspot on Earth. Books have been written about it. A hit television series is built around it. A Pentagon-linked research program has quietly connected to its name. Wealthy investors have bought and sold it for millions of dollars. And yet, after all of that money, all of that attention, and all of those years, no peer-reviewed study has ever confirmed what actually happened there. Here is the reality most viewers never hear. The story of Skinwalker Ranch is not really a story about monsters. It is a story about belief, about money, about media, and about how a real place, owned by real families, became one of the most misunderstood locations in modern American history. This is the true, documented history of Skinwalker Ranch, told the way history should be told. Not by repeating every dramatic claim as fact, but by separating what is actually verified from what has only ever been said. Because the difference between what was claimed and what was proven matters more than the legend itself. Let us begin with the land, long before the ranch had a name that made headlines. In the Uinta Basin of northeastern Utah, bordered by the Uinta and Ouray Indian Reservation, sits a stretch of high desert ranchland that has drawn ufologists, paranormal investigators, journalists, and even United States government researchers. Officially, it is a working cattle ranch. Unofficially, it has become shorthand for something else entirely. A place where, according to those who live there, the ordinary rules of physics seem to break down. The land sits within the traditional territory of the Ute people, adjacent to one of the largest Native American reservations in the United States. This is a verified, documented fact, and it matters, because the popular name attached to the ranch does not actually come from Ute tradition at all. The word skinwalker in Navajo is Yinaldlushi, and it describes a specific and feared figure in Navajo or Dine, spiritual belief. A person said to have gained the ability to transform into animal forms, usually through malevolent means. This is a real and significant part of Navajo cultural and religious tradition, one that many Navajo people consider sacred, sensitive, and inappropriate to discuss casually or for entertainment. The ranch, however, sits primarily on land historically associated with the Ute tribe, not the Navajo Nation. Separately, Ute oral tradition in the region includes its own stories about the land, about caution, about respect for certain places, and about phenomena that could not be easily explained. These are two distinct cultural traditions, and popular media has often blurred them together under one commercial name. It is worth pausing on that point, because it says something important. Long before any television producer arrived with cameras, this land already carried meaning, caution, and story for the people who called it home. What happened later was, in many ways, a story about outsiders applying a borrowed word to a place that already had its own relationship with mystery. For most of the 20th century, the property functioned as an unremarkable ranch, largely unknown outside the local area. Cattle grazed, seasons changed, life moved at the pace of rural Utah. That quiet changed in 1994. In that year, Terry and Gwen Sherman purchased the ranch, intending to raise cattle and build a life there with their family. This is verified fact, documented in property records, and confirmed by the family themselves in later interviews. What happened next depends entirely on whose account you trust, because from 1994 through 1996, the Sherman family began describing a range of disturbing experiences on the property. According to their own statements, given later to journalists and investigators, they witnessed unexplained animal deaths, strange lights in the sky, unusual sounds, and encounters they said they could not rationally explain. It is critical to be precise here. These accounts come directly from the family's own statements. They are reported claims, not independently verified events. No forensic investigation at the time produced physical evidence that has been made public and confirmed by outside scientific bodies. That does not mean the Shermans were lying. And it does not mean they were correct. It means simply that what we have is testimony, not proof, and a responsible telling of this history has to hold both possibilities with honesty. Whatever the Shermans experienced, it was enough that by 1996, they made the decision to sell. The buyer was a man whose name would become inseparable from the ranch's future, Robert Bigelow. Robert Bigelow was, and remains, a real and significant figure in American aerospace and real estate. He founded Bigelow Aerospace, a company focused on private spaceflight and expandable space habitat technology, and he built substantial wealth through real estate development, most notably the Budget Suites of America hotel chain. He also had a long-standing, well-documented personal interest in unidentified aerial phenomena and paranormal research, funding investigations for years before he ever purchased the ranch. In 1996, Bigelow bought the property from the Shermans for a reported price of roughly $200,000. This purchase is publicly documented and is treated as verified fact. What Bigelow did next transformed the ranch's story from local rumor into something resembling formal investigation. He founded the National Institute for Discovery Science, commonly known by its acronym, NIDS, a private research organization dedicated to studying unexplained phenomena using scientific methodology. Over the following years, NIDS conducted a genuine, multi-year investigation of the Skinwalker Ranch property. Researchers installed cameras, sensors, and monitoring equipment. Trained personnel, including scientists with legitimate academic backgrounds, spent extended periods documenting the land and its occurrences. This is verified fact. A real organization, staffed by real researchers, conducted a real, sustained investigation. What they found, however, remains far more contested. The most detailed public account of the NIDS-era investigation comes from a book published in 2005, titled Hunt for the Skinwalker, co-authored by journalist George Knapp and biochemist Colm Kelleher, who had served as a lead investigator during the NID years. The book compiled investigator accounts, personal testimonies, and descriptions of anomalous events reported during the research period. It became a bestseller and is widely credited with introducing the ranch's story to a mass audience for the first time. It is important to understand what this book actually represents historically. It is a documented compilation of investigator testimony and personal recollection, written by people who were genuinely present and genuinely investigating. It is not, however, a peer-reviewed scientific paper, and its contents have not been independently replicated or confirmed by outside scientific institutions. Testimony from trained investigators still carries more weight than casual anecdote, but it remains testimony, not proof. The ranch's story might have remained a niche subject for paranormal enthusiasts, had it not been for a development that gave it an unexpected layer of institutional credibility. Between 2007 and 2012, the United States Department of Defense funded a program known as the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Applications Program, later connected to a related effort called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. These were real, taxpayer-funded government initiatives, established to study reports of unidentified aerial phenomena, often in the context of potential national security implications. Robert Bigelow's aerospace company held a contract under this government program. In December of 2017, the New York Times published detailed investigative reporting, confirming that some funds from this Pentagon program were used to study reported phenomena, including research connected to Skinwalker Ranch. This is verified documented fact, confirmed by a major news organization through government sources and official records. What has never been publicly confirmed, however, is the full scope or conclusiveness of what that government-funded research actually found at the ranch specifically. The connection between the Pentagon program and the property is real and documented. The idea that this connection proves anything paranormal occurred, there is not. This is precisely the kind of distinction that gets lost in retellings, where a documented government contract becomes, through repetition, treated as if it were confirmation of extraordinary claims. It was not. It was funding for research, and research by its nature does not guarantee conclusive answers. In 2016, Robert Bigelow sold the ranch. The buyer was Adavantium Real Estate, led by Utah businessman Brandon Fugel, for a reported price of approximately $4.5 million. A striking increase from the $200,000 Bigelow had paid 2 decades earlier. This dramatic rise in value reflects, in large part, not agricultural worth, but the value of the ranch's reputation itself. By this point, Skinwalker Ranch was no longer simply land. It had become intellectual property, a brand built on decades of accumulated mystery. In 2020, that brand reached its widest audience yet, when the History Channel began airing a television series titled The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, following a new team of investigators, assembled by Fugel, as they conducted ongoing research on the property. The show has proven highly popular and continues to run multiple seasons. It is important to be direct and clear about what this program actually is. It is a produced reality television series, created for entertainment and commercial viewership, not a peer-reviewed scientific study. Multiple scientists, skeptics, and researchers outside the production have raised concerns that the series presents inconclusive, ambiguous, or in some cases seemingly staged events as significant findings, using editing techniques and dramatic framing common to reality television. This criticism does not mean nothing unusual has ever been recorded on the property. It means that television production incentives and scientific rigor are two very different things. And viewers deserve to know which one they are watching. Now let us look at the people whose decisions actually shape this history, because behind every legend are real individuals making real choices. Terry and Gwen Sherman owned the ranch from 1994 to 1996. Their personal accounts of unexplained events were the spark that first brought the property regional, then national attention. Whatever their true experiences were, their willingness to speak publicly changed the trajectory of this land forever. Robert Bigelow, the aerospace entrepreneur and founder of Bigelow Aerospace, transformed the ranch from a site of private anecdote into a site of formal funded investigation. His wealth and long-standing interest in unexplained phenomena gave the ranch resources and structure that private families never could have provided. Colm Kelleher, a biochemist, led much of the NIDS-era field investigation, bringing legitimate scientific training to a subject often dismissed as fringe. His later work, co-authoring Hunt for the Skinwalker, remains one of the most detailed documented accounts of what investigators reported observing during that period. George Knapp, a veteran investigative journalist based in Las Vegas, has covered the ranch consistently since the 1990s, making him one of the longest-running chroniclers of its story, and one of the few figures connecting the earliest Sherman family accounts to the present-day television production. Brandon Fugel, a Utah real estate investor, purchased the property in 2016 and has since become its most public face, partnering with television producers to bring the ranch's ongoing investigation to a mainstream audience larger than anything the earlier NIDS years ever reached. Now, let us be precise about what we actually know, separated cleanly from what has only ever been claimed. Here is what is verified. The ranch is a real, privately owned property in Utah's Uinta Basin. It has changed hands multiple times, and each sale is publicly documented through property records and news reporting. A private research organization, the National Institute for Discovery Science, did conduct a real multi-year, funded investigation using trained personnel and monitoring equipment. A United States government-funded program did have a documented financial connection to research associated with the ranch, confirmed through official Pentagon contracts and independent journalism. And critically, no peer-reviewed scientific paper has ever been published confirming paranormal, extraterrestrial, or supernatural activity at the location. Here is what remains unverified. The specific personal accounts of the Sherman family and the accounts of later investigators described in Hunt for the Skinwalker are compelling as testimony, but they are not backed by publicly released, independently confirmed physical evidence. And claims popularized by the History Channel series should be understood as content from a produced entertainment program, not as findings from a peer-reviewed scientific study. This is not a story of a single dramatic discovery. It is a story that unfolds through turning points, each one shifting how the ranch was understood by the public. The first turning point was the Sherman family's decision to go public with their experiences in the mid-1990s, transforming a private ranch into a subject of regional, then national, curiosity, almost entirely through word of mouth and local reporting. The second turning point was Robert Bigelow's purchase in 1996. This moved the story from anecdote to organized investigation. For the first time, trained researchers with real equipment were documenting the property over years, not weeks, giving the ranch a scientific veneer it had never had before. The third turning point was the publication of Hunt for the Skinwalker in 2005, which took NIDIS-era findings out of private circulation and introduced them to a mass reading audience, cementing the ranch's reputation in popular culture for the first time. The fourth turning point was the 2017 New York Times reporting on the Pentagon's UFO-related program, which revealed a documented, if limited, government financial connection to research tied to the ranch. This single piece of journalism added a layer of institutional credibility that pure folklore or private testimony never could have achieved on its own. The fifth turning point was the 2016 sale to Brandon Fugal, followed by the 2020 launch of the History Channel series, which shifted the ranch from a subject of niche scientific curiosity into a mainstream media franchise, reaching millions of viewers who had never heard of the Shermans, NIDZ, or Colm Kelleher at all. So what has this ranch actually changed, beyond its own reputation? Its impact is not measured in confirmed discoveries. It is measured in how it reshaped public fascination with the unexplained. It became a case study in how private testimony, genuine scientific curiosity, government funding, and entertainment media can blend together until the line between them nearly disappears for the average viewer. The ranch helped popularize a modern shift within the broader UFO research movement, one that increasingly leans on invoking institutional legitimacy, government contracts, and scientific-sounding organizations, even in cases where conclusive evidence remains entirely absent. It taught later researchers and media producers a powerful lesson, that credibility can be borrowed through association, even when it has not been earned through peer-reviewed proof. It also raised uncomfortable and legitimate questions about the use of indigenous cultural terms for commercial purposes. The word skinwalker, drawn from sacred Navajo tradition and applied commercially to land connected primarily to the Ute people, has been criticized by Native writers, scholars, and cultural commentators as a troubling example of cultural appropriation, one that takes a spiritually sensitive concept from one nation, misapplies it to the land of another, and commodifies it for entertainment and profit. This criticism is a documented part of the public conversation surrounding the ranch, and any honest history of this place has to include it. There is also a quieter, more human dimension to this story worth acknowledging. Isolated, remote locations, especially at night in unfamiliar terrain, are known to produce genuine perceptual and psychological effects, things like pareidolia, where the human brain interprets random stimuli as meaningful patterns, or the well-documented influence of expectation and suggestion on human perception. None of this proves that every account from the ranch has an ordinary explanation. But responsible historical analysis requires acknowledging that human perception, under stress, isolation, and heightened expectation, is not perfectly reliable, and that this is a real, scientifically supported factor worth weighing alongside every extraordinary claim. So, what is the real significance of Skinwalker Ranch when we strip away the dramatic framing? It is not really a story about whether something supernatural happened on that land. It is a story about what happens when personal testimony collides with private wealth, government funding, and commercial media, and how quickly the three can become nearly impossible to tell apart. It shows how quickly individual experience can transform into cultural legend, how private money can fund investigations that operate entirely outside standard peer review, yet still meaningfully shape public belief, and how easily a real place, real families, and real indigenous traditions can be flattened into a single marketable mystery, packaged more for television ratings than for historical accuracy. Historians and scientists remain genuinely divided here, and it is worth stating clearly where that divide actually lies. It is not a disagreement over whether strange claims have been made about this property, because that much is undisputed and well documented. The real disagreement is over how much weight unverified personal testimony should carry, in the complete absence of independently reproducible physical evidence. That disagreement is not a flaw in the story. It is, itself, part of the historical record, and pretending otherwise would be a disservice to the very audience trusting this account to be accurate. So, after everything, what did they really find at Skinwalker Ranch? The honest answer is considerably less cinematic than the legend suggests. What we actually have, documented across 3 decades, is A body of personal testimony from multiple families and investigators. A handful of well-funded but scientifically inconclusive research efforts. One credible but limited government research connection confirmed through investigative journalism. And, eventually, a media franchise built as much on sustained mystery as on verified fact. Perhaps that is the real story worth telling here. Not a monster in the dark, not a hidden chamber, not a terrifying confirmed discovery, but a mirror held up to how modern